Yes, we're good. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our brush calligraphy introduction here at Oomomo. My name is Maurelle, and I will be the one who will be teaching you the basics of brush calligraphy. I hope you're all excited. And what's going to happen today is I will teach you these fundamentals of brush calligraphy so that you can practice on your own afterwards. We will be having a replay as well, so don't worry if you miss some parts. But I do hope that you'll be staying tuned with us for an hour and we're going to have some fun. So what we're going to do is I'm going to sit on the chair and we'll be having our desk so you can see how I write. And maybe if you have some questions, you can type it on the comment section, and you can also message us later on. All right, so let's get it on. Okay, so I'm just gonna set up my area over here, and let's see. Is it the other way? Okay. So I hope you were able to print out your worksheets. And by the way, we have an exemplar of the lowercase and uppercase alphabet. And you can use this as reference when you practice. But before we dive into letters, I'm going to teach you first the basic strokes because that's the most important thing that you have to practice when you're starting out with brush calligraphy. So these strokes, these are the ones that you have to put together, and that will make up your letters and also make up your words. And before anything else, before we really pick up the pen and write, there are just important things and reminders that I want to teach you first. And number one would be, of course, when you're practicing, it is ideal that you have a paper with lines. All right. So I don't know with you, but with me, it's so hard to write when there's no line on my paper. And it will also guide you, especially in the forms of your letter. So the one that I provided, that's what you call your guidelines. And you can actually print that out as many times as you want. And make sure that you print it in at least 24-pound paper so that it's smooth and your ink will not bleed. So we have lots of choices on the pens that we showed you. And here in Momo, when you go here under stationery section, they have lots of brush pens. So what you just want to secure is something like this. So this one is a felt tip pen. All right. So it has that very flexible tip, and it shouldn't be broad. It should just be something like this. And when you put pressure on it, when you write down, you will see that it's giving you like a nice thick line. All right. So first is how do you hold your pen and how you position your paper. I'm going to use this big tip pen. We have another one here, which is a smaller tip, but it really doesn't matter what the tip size is. The good thing here is that the concept is all the same. You just have to adjust how you hold your pen. All right, so I'll be using the bigger one so that we can see the strokes. And another thing is, of course, the bigger the tip, the bigger the thickness will be. So like this one, this is a small tip pen. And then this one has a bigger tip, so you can have like a thicker line. All right, so that's just the difference between the two of that. So I'll be using this one. And then first is how do you position your paper? So when you write, when you put down your paper, usually it's just like straight up, 90 degrees. So if you're right-handed, you want to shift your paper in such a way that it's turning counterclockwise. So you're just gonna have to do it somewhat like this. And if you're left-handed, there are different ways, but one way is that you're shifting it to the right. All right. So for right-handed people, and just like me, I'm right-handed, so we'll be shifting it counterclockwise. So it's kind of slanted. You want to do this so that you don't have to twist your arm. And I'm gonna show that to you next. So how do you hold your pen? The good thing about brush calligraphy is that you don't have to figure out very hard how to hold it. Number one, you just grab it just like any pen, like a pencil or something like that. But then the most important thing that you have to make sure is that you don't hold it straight up like this. All right, so this is the most important. Do not hold it like this. What you want to do is just give it an angle about like 45 degrees between the paper and the pen, and you should be good. So what's going to happen here is that if you see these lines, those are your guidelines, and then this is your pen. So your pen, the tip of your pen, should be facing the left side if you're right-handed, and it's perpendicular to these guidelines over here, this slant or slope lines. So it's something like that, right? So that when I write, let's say I'm doing a stroke, this tip is facing the left side. So you don't want it straight up because you're gonna damage your pen very easily. So you want to make sure that it's just at least 45 degrees so that you'll have a nice strokes that you'll have to produce. Okay, so that is basically how you hold and write your pen. One important thing to remember, and maybe you can say this with me, calligraphy is not handwriting. What do I mean by that? So when you do calligraphy, it's more of like drawing the letters. So when you draw the letters, you're lifting your hand and then you're also moving it around. So we're not using your fingers most of the time, right? Like 99% we'll be using at least your wrist, your forearm, and if it's like a bigger movement, then you have to use your whole arm, right? So, but for this demonstration, we have just like a legal size paper. So, using your wrist and your forearm should be good. So, the fleshy part of your arm should be on the table, but don't put any weight on it. You just want to make sure that your hand is gliding smoothly on the paper. And then when you write, you're not doing this, but you're actually moving your forearm or your wrist. So there's nothing wrong using a little bit of fingers if it's like a small letter, but most of the time, it's really just your wrist and your forearm. So these are just the simple things that you have to remember so that it will be a faster journey for you to learn calligraphy. Okay, so next thing that I want to share with you is the some terms we'll be using today. And this is important because it's going to help you to form your letters. So if you can see on your worksheets, your guidelines, I have this A, X, and D. All right. So this X area over here, this is what you call the X height. The X height is pretty much the height of most of your lowercase alphabet, just like the letter A, or the letter O, those letters, or of course the letter X. And I believe that's why it's called X height because it's the size of the letter X. So that is your X height, and the I'm just gonna change my pen so you can see it. So this line at the bottom over here, if you can see that, that's the line where most of your lowercase sits, and that's what you call the baseline. All right, and on top of that, the top portion is what you call the waistline or the midline. And then this area over here, this is your ascender area, and this is your ascender line. So when do we use this? It's when you have letters that extending upward, just like the letter B or the letter H, those kind of letters, or letter T. And then, so obviously this is called the ascender, and this is your ascender area, and this is your ascender line. Now, when you have letters that's going down, like, for example, the letter G, it's going to go down the baseline. So this is what you call the sender. And of course, this is your descender area, and this is your first descender line. All right, so this is just a good guide so that you know where to bring your letters. And since we're doing modern brush calligraphy, there's really no calligraphy police that will tell you, hey, that's too tall or too long. It really depends on your preference, but most of the time it just goes up to the first ascender and first descender line, and that's the height. So you don't want to practice too big yet, just because this is just your first time, and you want to get a hold and get a hang of how to form those letters first. All right, so those are the most important terms. And also, when you write a letter, there's what you call an entry stroke. So let's say I'm doing an A. This is my entry stroke. And then after doing the letter A, then this is my exit stroke. Right? So entrance and exit stroke. And if you see the variation here, there's thick and thin line. So that is actually what attracted me to calligraphy, because you know the beautiful contrast of thick and thin line. So the $1 million question now is, Maurelle, how do you produce the thick and thin line? All right, so this is the next part that we're gonna decipher. So I'm just gonna show you something. Let me just, okay, here. So your your thin line, just like this area over here and here, the thin lines, to produce that, it means that your letters, or your stroke is going upwards. All right. So there is no pressure on your pen. That's why you have a thin line. And that's what you call an upstroke, because it's going upward. Right? And the thick line are those that are going down, just like this area over here, right? This shaded area. So those are your thick lines, and that is going down your paper, moving towards you, and that is thick. And now, how do you produce that? So this thin line is what you call upstroke, and this thick line is what you call a downstroke, right? So that's the term that we use, upstroke and downstroke. So how do you do that? So for the upstroke, there we go. You have to remember this. So if it's an upstroke, there should be no pressure on your pen to the paper. So if this is the tip of my pen, this area over here is the only part that's touching the paper. So it's just gliding on the paper, right? So this area over here, and that's how you produce a thin line. Now, if you want to do the downstroke, of course, if you're writing a letter, let's say like letter A, and you're going down, then you have to put pressure. So downstroke, you put pressure on your pen so that it flexes down. So what's happening there is that when you put pressure on your pen, you want to make sure that this area over here is the one that's touching the paper, right? This whole area. So this could include including this area of the tip part. That's no problem. So this is thin, so that this area is just touching the paper. But if you want the thick line, you have to make sure that the side of the felt pen is the one that's touching the paper. So how do you do that? I hope we will be able to demonstrate that here. So what's happening is that for an upstroke, I'm just gliding my my pen on the paper, and there's no pressure, and it's just the tip of the pen. So I'm going up, and I'm just bringing this up. So if you hold your pen at the top, and then you start writing like with no effort, that should be how you're feeling when you're doing an upstroke. So there really is really no pressure going on. And with the zebra pens and the other pens that we have today, they have a very flexible tip, but hard enough that it's not flexing that much if you don't put pressure. But there are, for example, watercolor brushes. Those are very, very soft, and there are other brushes that are really soft as well. So for that one, you just have to adjust the pressure, because even if you're going up, it will give you like a very crazy flexibility. So you just have to adjust the whole of your hand. So that is your upstroke. And then now, if you're going to do a downstroke, then you just have to put pressure, and then with an equal pressure, you're just going down, right? It's the side of the pen that's touching the paper. So upstroke, it's just the tip. Downstroke is the side of the felt. So you want to make sure to remember that. And that is how we produce the beautiful thin and thick lines that we're going to do. So yeah, so that's everything that you need to know about the terms and how to hold the pen. It's just important to know these terms so that it's easier for you to practice calligraphy and you don't get frustrated right away. And I want you to remember that what we're doing today is, or what I'm teaching you is what you call muscle memory. All right. So don't beat yourself up if, let's say, after an hour you didn't figure it out. I didn't figure it out overnight. It took me like weeks, months even now I'm still practicing. So you just have to practice, and with practice, you will make progress. Right? So that's basically it. You just have to believe that you can do it, because you don't have to have a good handwriting to learn calligraphy. My handwriting is so bad, but with calligraphy, it's more of putting these strokes that you're learning. And, it's just like muscle memory. Sometimes when you have a new skill, let's say driving, you don't know how to drive it, but by consistently practicing and going out and driving, it becomes like a second nature to you. So that's how calligraphy is as well. Okay, so that is my pep talk. And now we are going to dive in and actually write. So, what we're going to do, I'm going to show you the basic strokes, the most important ones that you have to learn. And as I mentioned, these are the ones that you have to put together to form your letters. So, I know you want to write those names already, but you just have to be patient so that you'll be able to learn the basics first. Okay, so I hope you'll be able to get your worksheets wherein it's seeing your basic strokes, and we'll be learning 10 basic strokes today, and we'll be also touching on writing some letters, and also how to connect some words. Okay, so the first stroke that we're going to learn is what you call, of course, the downstroke. So I already told you about the downstroke a while ago. And by the way, the worksheets that you have here some worksheets where you can trace over it. All right, so you can just get a feel of how it works. And also, there's an arrow where it's showing you where you're going to start and where you need to go. And then at the bottom, then you have to try it yourself. All right, so don't be scared to try it yourself. We all start from scratch. Okay, so the first stroke is your downstroke. So how do you do a downstroke? So the downstroke starts just below the ascender line up here, and then you're gonna put pressure, and you're gonna pull down towards the baseline. And when you pull down, you have to make sure that there's just equal pressure so that you have this nice, consistent downstroke. So I'm gonna start on the top, press, and then pull it down, and then lift. That's your downstroke. So we'll do another one. Press, consistent pressure, and then pause, then lift. So there are some things that you don't want to do. You don't want to do this, right? So we're not flicking. Remember, I told you this is muscle memory. So you want to teach your muscle to really like follow through and really stop where you need to stop, because that will give you a nice control of your hand. So press and pull down, and then release. So that is your downstroke. By the way, once you figure out the proper angle for your hand and paper, just stay on that particular angle. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time, practice, and moving around your paper so that you're comfortable. You just don't want your hand to be twisting like this, just because your paper is so 90 degrees like this. You don't want to do that. That's going to hurt. So you want to make sure that you are just putting the right angle. And once you have that perfect angle that's comfortable for you, then you're good to go. And also, try not to hold your pen too far or too near the tip. All right. And don't hold it like as if your life depended on it. If you see your nails turning white, it means that you're holding it too tight. So just relax. Just hold it enough that it's secured on your hand, but of course not too loose that it's going to drop when you start writing. Okay, going back. So this is your downstroke. And just practice some of these later on so that you'll be able to get familiar with it. The most important thing here is that you have to train your hand and your eyes, meaning it doesn't matter like 100 or 1,000 downstrokes or any strokes, but if you're not doing it correctly, then it's not going to improve your calligraphy. So you just want to make sure that you are trying to critique your own work. Like, let's say, oh, did I really lift here, or am I flicking? So Maurelle said, don't flick. So try not to do that next time. So that's just how you train yourself. Okay, moving on. Let's go to your upstroke. So this is a downstroke, so it's with pressure. And again, as I showed you a while ago, the upstroke is without any pressure. So what you want to do is, let's say you're coming from a downstroke. When you go to an upstroke, you don't need to change your angle drastically. All right, you just have to glide your pen on the next stroke, and that's where you're going to begin. So for the upstroke, we are starting from the baseline, right? So from the baseline, we're going up with a slightly curved line, and we're going to stop just before your ascender line. So if you do that, start here, and it's just the tip of my felt that's touching the paper, and I'm going up like that. So if you are trying this now, you will probably be seeing that, hey, Maurelle, it's so wobbly. I can't figure this out. And that wobbliness is normal when you're starting out. So some tips that you can try. Number one, you want to make sure that your feet it's planted on the floor. All right, so try not to cross your feet yet. Planting your feet on the floor will really help you balance out. And then your left hand, if you're right-handed, your left hand should be on the table as well, just to make sure, just to help with the balance as well. And then you are not using your fingers, you're using your wrist when you go up. So it's sliding up like that. Especially like this. If you just use your fingers, sometimes the range of motion is very, very small. And that's where the wobbliness comes in. So you want to make sure that you're moving your wrist as you go up. And it's going to be wobbly for a little while, but with consistent practice and making sure that your hands and your body position is very steady, then you'll be able to do that. And it doesn't have to be perfect. That's what I love about calligraphy because it's with your hand. It's not computerized. So the imperfection is the one that makes it beautiful as well, right? So that's another thing about it. So this is your upstroke. So we have your downstroke and your upstroke. Now we're gonna go with the next one. And this time we're gonna combine together the upstroke and the downstroke to form more ovalish forms. So the first one on our list of combination is what you call the overcurve, right? The reason why I call it over because it's going over like that. And what's happening here is that there is a transition going on at the top where your waistline is, right? So I'm gonna do it a little bit bigger so that you can see it on a camera, but ideally it's just like the height of the X height. So I'm gonna make it bigger here so you can see first. So you're starting first with your upstroke. From the baseline, you're going up with an upstroke and then turn. Once you turn, you're gradually putting pressure and then lift at the bottom. So what's happening here is that there is no pressure here, and then you're gonna turn first, and then around 2 o'clock, you're gonna put pressure. So this pressure here, it's important to know that it should be a gradual pressure, all right? It shouldn't be abrupt because of course it's not gonna look nice. So you want like a tapering kind of stroke in here. So you have to gradually put pressure, and then of course this area over here, it started to give you like an equal pressure already. So just continue with that until you reach the bottom and you reach the baseline. And then you pause and lift. All right, so that is your overcurve. So I'll do it again a little bit bigger so you can see. Upstroke, turn, press, and then go down. So another thing you want to make sure is that this upstroke and this downstroke, they're sort of parallel to each other. All right, so if you put like a distance over here, there's a nice parallel space going on. So meaning you don't want it to be something like this or too narrow like that. So you just want a nice equal space and it should be parallel to each other. Okay, so that will really help in making your letters beautiful. So let's try these examples over here. I'm going to trace it. And you're starting from the baseline. You're going up, curve, and then start to press when you're going down. and then lift. All right, again, no flicking happening yet. So one good reminder is that when you're turning, there should be no pressure, right? When you're looping or turning, there's no pressure. It's after you turn, that's where you're gonna put the pressure. So if I'm gonna do that here at the bottom, upstroke, turn, gradual pressure, full pressure, release. So that is your overcurve. So where is this very helpful? So for example, you have letters M, N, those kind of letters. It's very helpful for that because that's where you can use it, right? So our letter M, there's two overcurves there. So I'll teach you more about this later, but that's where you can use this overcurve. Okay, so that's it for overcurve. And now we're gonna go with our fourth stroke. So we already have upstroke, downstroke, overcurve, and then now we're gonna do an undercurve. Undercurve is just the opposite of your overcurve. And we're starting with a downstroke and looping, going up back on a parallel upstroke. So we're starting here. I'm gonna make it bigger again so you can see it on your screen. So downstroke, and before you reach the bottom, you're gonna release the pressure gradually. And as you go up, it's an upstroke. So I'll do it again. It's hard when you're talking and writing at the same time. And then you go up like that. So if you analyze it, of course, this is a downstroke. And then in this area over here, that's where you start releasing the pressure. Once you touch the baseline, there should be no pressure anymore because you're looping back up. And then finish it with an upstroke, going straight up to where you started your stroke. So if I'm going to make it smaller, which is what we have on our worksheets, we're starting at the waistline. And then release the pressure before you reach the bottom, going up for an upstroke, and then pause. So as you can see, I still make those mistakes wherein when I put too much, a little bit more pressure, then it's giving me that thick line, right? So that is just part of life and part of practicing calligraphy. And also, don't forget, this should be parallel too, okay? And that is your undercurve. This is good for letters U, W, those kind of letters. Wow, it smells so good in here, guys. I mean, I'm at the Oomomo Cafe and they have like some waffles, I guess. It's so good. I'm getting hungry. Okay, now we go to the next one, which is your compound curve. This is just a combination of your overcurve and undercurve, right? So you've known that those two already. So we're just gonna combine it in one stroke. And I'm gonna make it bigger at the bottom so you can see. We're starting with an overcurve, upstroke, and then go down and then release the pressure again. And then now I'm making the undercurve, right? It's something like this. So if I'm going to make it small, just like what we have on our example, you're starting with an upstroke, curve on the waistline, press, pressure, release before you reach the bottom, and then go up. So there's a lot of things going on in there when you're doing this stroke. So try to do it slowly first. You don't need to rush. Again, this is not handwriting. And the faster you do it, the lesser the nicer the form is. So you want to make sure that you take it a little bit slower than your normal handwriting speed. So you really don't miss those little details. So you also want to make sure that that is still parallel to each other, right? And there's like a nice space going on in between. So that's your compound curve. Compound curve. There's a lot of benefit on learning this stroke. So let, for example, you have the letter H, and you can use this as the second stroke of your letter H. So that is your compound curve. And also, when you start flourishing, this will be also a really nice practice because almost all letters, actually all letters are based on ovals, right? Even like flourishing. When I say flourishing, those are like the nice little things that you see around the letter. But we were not going to go there right now. We want to do the basics first. And when you're familiar with it, then, you can move on with flourishing. Okay, so that is your compound curve. Now, our next stroke is your pressure release. This is just like your undercurve, but a little bit taller, and you're just stopping in the waistline. So it's just a combination of a downstroke and then release the pressure gradually, loop back with an upstroke like this, right? So if I cut this over here, this is just your undercurve. So you know that already. So this should be easier for you. So you just want to make sure that you don't make it too wide or you don't make it too narrow like this. So you still want that nice parallel space in between. Okay, so that's your pressure release stroke. And now the next one is your ascending loop. So the ascending loop is good for letters H, B, K, those kind of letters. So what we have here is also a downstroke and an upstroke combining, but we're starting first with your upstroke. And I'm starting that in the middle of the X height. So I'm making an upstroke and then I'm looping back down. And once I loop down, that's where I gradually put pressure and do a downstroke. Right? I'll do it again. Upstroke, loop to the left, and then down with a downstroke. So this is how you should do it. One common mistake would be doing this. So this is not correct. This is already like a letter L, all right? So this is different. And because if I put if I do this compound curve, that's the letter H, right? So if I do that here, that's not going the right way. So you want to make sure that you practice your hand movement wherein it's really making the ascending loop. So that's your ascending loop. And when in terms of like how high it would be, it really depends on you. But for the sake of this worksheet, you can just keep it within the ascender space. So that's your ascending loop. Okay, so we have now your descending loop. I hope you're able to remember everything. Well, you do have the term on your worksheets as well, so you won't be able to forget that. So the ascending loop is pretty much like the letter J, but it's not the letter J yet. It doesn't have an entry stroke and a dot. And what's happening here is that it's going down the descender area. So you're starting with a downstroke, and then you're gradually removing the pressure before you loop up with an upstroke. Okay, so let's do it again. From the waistline, put pressure, equal pressure, release the pressure before you turn, and making sure that it's an upstroke, no pressure, and that's your descending loop. So if I do this here at the bottom, you want to make sure I'm not out of frame. Okay, so from the waistline, release the pressure, loop back, and that's your descending loop. Okay, so you have to make sure you breathe when you do this. I find that exhaling when there's like a critical form or a critical line, exhaling will relax my hand as well. So this is good for letter G, Y, Z, those kind of letters. And for example, I have the letter G. I'm just gonna touch that, and that's my letter G, right? So it's just a combination. Okay, so that's your descending loop. I hope you're still with me. We have now your oval. Okay, a few more strokes. I think we have two more strokes. So the oval, as I mentioned a while ago, the letters, they are really based from the oval. right? So ovals are really nice, and you can really use this with a lot for a lot of letters. And there's a different way of doing it. Sometimes some people would do like an oval like this, right? And that's totally fine. But my technique is I start around 2 o'clock of the X height at the top. I don't start at the very top just because I find that there's more continuity, fluidity when you do that. So I'm gonna make it bigger. I'm gonna write it bigger so you can see it as well. So I'm starting here with an upstroke, and the upstroke is looping to the left. So starting here, no pressure, loop. After looping, I gradually put pressure, equal pressure, and then I'll release the pressure before I reach the baseline. And then I'm going up for my upstroke, and then I'm meeting where I started. So that is how your oval should look like. And if I do it again, starting here, loop, and then go down again, release the pressure before you reach the bottom, loop up, and then let it meet. Right? When I was starting out, I was really challenged with this oval because sometimes it doesn't meet. So you just want to make sure tell your hand that you want to meet where you started. So that's your oval. Okay, so an oval, for example, we are doing the letter A. It's just a combination of your oval and your pressure release stroke. And you already got your letter A, right? So that's how you form your letters. But before we move on to that, I just have like one special stroke that I want to share with you. This is like not on calligraphy books or on the formal training in calligraphy, but when I was starting out, I was really having a hard time with the letter P. Thus, I call it the petal stroke because it looks like a petal and it starts with the letter P. Letter P was my nemesis letter. I was really having a hard time writing it. So I tried to break it down. When you're having a hard time writing a letter, you have to break it down into strokes. That's how you're gonna figure it out. So this one is just like a petal starting from the baseline. So I'm gonna draw a petal, still applying wherein if it's a downstroke, it's obviously a thin line, a thick line, and then I'm just making an exit stroke. All right. So again, like a petal, and then I'm just exiting. So where is this helpful? I find this helpful with the letter B and the letter P, just because the letter B, for example, is a combination of your ascending loop. So remember the ascending loop that we did? So this is your first stroke, and then you lift your pen, and then your second stroke will be the petal stroke. You're starting from the baseline, and ta-da! That's your letter B. Now for the letter P, also the same. This is the first and second stroke of your letter P. And then I'll do the petal stroke again. I'm starting from the baseline. Petal. Ta-da. So that's where I find it helpful. So I hope this will be helpful for you as well. Okay, so guys, that is all the foundational strokes. I taught you 10 basic strokes, and these are really seriously all you need to master, and you'll be able to write any lowercase letter that you want. I hope we have more time. I won't be able to show you all the lowercase alphabet, but I want to share with you some of it so that you can practice at home. And besides, I provided you this worksheet, and if you can see on the worksheets, there's an arrow, and it's changing. If you print it in black and white, maybe you can take a look at the computer or in the screen, and you can see that there's a change in color of the arrow. It only means that if the color changes, it means that it's another stroke. You have to lift your pen. So the technique in calligraphy is that the more you lift your pen, the better your letters or words will be. You have to always lift your pen. When I say lift, it's not an exaggerated like lift over your hand, over your head. It's just a little pause, right? A little pause, a little break, because when you do that break, it resets your brain, and you can position your pen again, like reset it, and you can position it in such a way that you'll produce a nicer line. So I'm just going to show you some examples on our worksheets, just for you to know how to form these letters. So, for example, the first one that I showed you is the oval. Oh, sorry, not the oval, the overcurve and undercurve, right? So let's say the letter M. The letter M is just a combination of upstroke and then a downstroke. Sorry, let me just position my paper. Upstroke, downstroke, and then an overcurve and a compound curve. Right? So these are the four strokes that you have to put together. And in between the strokes, you have to lift your hand. I know it could be tiring at first, but when your muscles are used to it, you won't really like notice it anymore. So you want to make sure that you really pause in between because that will make your letters more beautiful. So when I write this, I'm gonna go for an upstroke, pause, or lift my pen, downstroke, lift my pen again. And from the baseline, I'm going to do my first overcurve and then lift again. And then my second overcurve, which is also a compound curve, right? So if I do this in color, it's going to look like this. So I'm just changing the color so you will see, you'll see it better where I lift my pen. So this is my first stroke. I lift my pen, downstroke, lift my pen. From the baseline, first overcurve, I lift my pen, and then second, your compound curve, and then you exit. Right? So that means that you lift your pen when you change color, and that's how you're supposed to practice. So you also want to make sure that all your letters are happy. What do I mean by happy? You have to follow through and exit. Your exit stroke should be happy. So if you see this one over here, if I put like a little eyes over there, can you see that it's a smiley face? So that's what I mean by happy. So for example, let's combine an oval and an undercurve, a pressure release or an undercurve. So we're gonna make the letter A, and it's gonna start first with your upstroke. That's your entry stroke, and then oval. Lift my pen again, and then your undercurve. But you're not going to finish it off, right? So as you can see, I'm exiting out and up. So I'm not doing this, right? So try not to do this. Okay, you really want to make sure that you're going back up to the area of the X height when you are writing a letter because that will train your muscle and it will be helpful when you start connecting your letters. So for example, let's do an ascending loop. So I have my first stroke, which is the ascending loop, and I'm going to make the letter B. So the next one is the petal stroke. And then now I'm going to bring this up, the exit stroke. I'm not going to do this, wherein I'm bringing down my stroke. So as you can see, this one is a sad letter and this one is a happy letter because this is going up and this is going down. So you don't want to do this. You want to make sure that they're all happy. And why do you want to do that? Because, for example, I'm going to write a word, let's say the word box, right? So I'll start with a B. And then if I exit here in the middle, I'll be able to lift my hand and write the second letter. And I don't have to worry that it's not connecting properly. Because if this is going down over here, I won't be able to connect it with the letter O, right? So that's how, and that's how it should be. And let's say letter O, I'm making it happy again, and I'm exiting and making the letter X. Okay, so since we're here already, I'm just going to give you also a background on how you can connect your letters. So in connecting your letters, there is just some concepts that you have to remember. And in the beginning, I told you about your entrance stroke and your exit stroke. All right. So if we have a word, let's say the word Japan. All right. Since Oomomo is a Japan living products, and it's what I saw on my table. So if I break down the word Japan, it's the letter J. So again, it's happy, it's exiting out, and then the letter A. Again, exit again, make sure it's happy. And then the letter P. Again, letter is happy, check. And then the letter A again, exit, happy. And the letter N. And again, you bet the letter should be happy. So this is the word, oh, and don't forget your dot or your flick. This is the only time you can flick. On the letter J, you can do a flick instead of a dot. So this is the word, right? Japan. And what you want to do now is you want to connect it. And for you to be able to connect it, you just have to, number one, anticipate what the next letter will be, because that's where you're going to bring your upstroke or your exit stroke. And then number two, your exit stroke, this area over here, will become the entry stroke of your next letter. So what's going to happen is you won't be writing the entrance stroke of the next letter anymore, because it will be your exit stroke that will become your entry stroke. So it's going to be combining to each other. So what do I mean by that? When you're right, and if you are just starting out with calligraphy, the best way to practice writing is to really write a lot of words. You might have to write words so many times for you to figure out what's the best way to connect it. Because when you're connecting those letters to form words, sometimes it's really challenging because you really don't know where to bring those exit strokes. So what's happening here is that when you write, you have to have a self-talk. You have to be mindful of where you're going to bring your exit stroke. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this with these two pens. And again, if I change my pen, it means that I'm pausing and I'm lifting my pen. All right. And at the same time, I'll be talking, but it's what's going on in my head. So let's say the word Japan. I'll do first my entry stroke, lift my pen, and then my descending loop. Now my next letter is A, that's why I bring my exit stroke over here. I lift my pen. I'm not gonna make I'm not gonna make the entry stroke of the letter A anymore because it's already here. So what I'm gonna go next is the oval of the letter A. So I'm gonna bring my pen away so that I have enough space for my oval, and the side of the oval is just touching the exit stroke of the J. So oval, and then lift, because I'll be changing my pen and because it's a new stroke. So the next stroke for the letter A, again, pressure release. Now my next letter is P, so obviously I'm gonna bring this up here and I'm gonna lift my pen and do the next stroke. My next stroke is P. I'm not gonna do this anymore because it's already here. So I'm gonna start with the next stroke, which is the downstroke, and then lift my pen, reset, and then I'll go with the next one, which is your petal stroke. Start at the baseline, and I know that my next letter is the letter A. So I'm going to bring my exit stroke in the middle. I'm not going to bring it all the way up, because if I bring it all the way up, it's not going to have like a really nice look. Or obviously, if I go down, it's also not like a natural way of connecting it. So bringing it in the middle is just fine. Then I lift my pen, and I'm going to write the oval separately, touching the exit stroke, and lift my pen again, do my next stroke. Now, my next letter is N. So again, I know that I can bring this all the way up over here. You can bring it all the way up and continue with the first stroke, or you can pause and you can do the first stroke of the letter N. Sorry, second stroke, because you already are not going to write this entrance stroke. and then lift my pen, and then overcurve, and then exit, making your letter happy. Then go back and do your dots and your T's. Whew, wow. That's how you connect the letters, right, to form words. So, what I suggest is that before you get into this, master first the basic strokes, and then after that, go and practice the letters, the lowercase alphabet, and then after that, that's the time you can go and really get full throttle on connecting your letters, because it's going to be frustrating if you go straight to writing your letters and you really don't know the forms of each stroke yet. That is one of the mistakes that I did when I was starting out with brush calligraphy. Like, I just go dive in, write words, write letters, and I was like, this is not working. And I have to stop. And I read in a book, one of the books that I recommend is like Mastering Copper Plates. And that really helped me pause and do the basic strokes first. I know I have to be patient. I'm so excited to write, but I have to be patient and do that first. And then after that, it was like um, an easier task for me to write the letters afterwards. So you have to give yourself time to really practice. Again, it's not an overnight thing, but the more you practice, the better. And again, as I mentioned a while ago, practice makes progress. Okay, so now I'm gonna show you before we go. Can you believe it's almost an hour? Before we go, I'm gonna show you how you can do this as well. If, for example, you have notebooks, you can write your names on notebooks and all that kind of stuff. And for example, we have these notebooks. I love these notebooks of Oomomo because it's really nice. It has really smooth paper in it, and you can write anything in there. So many sizes to choose from as well. So yeah. Okay, so you can write it here. So for example, you have different colored papers, and let's do a name. Maybe I can write Cecilia because I see Cecilia watching today. Okay, so we're gonna do that first, wherein you can use the different colors to decorate, and we're gonna make sure that we plan. So when you do this, and if you're not really comfortable yet with calligraphy, I suggest that you start first doing this on a piece of paper, and then after that, and doing it with a pencil so that you can easily erase it. I unfortunately don't have a piece of paper here today, but if you, I mean, a pencil, not a piece of paper, a pencil. But if you're home and you're, just trying to scribble, then you can lay out, for example, oh, this is my notebook, and then maybe I want it slanted, right? And then you can start with pencil first on how you're gonna write it. And then this is just me. I'm just gonna exaggerate it a bit. And then, okay, so maybe I can do something like this, right? So lay it out and also practice how you're going to connect the letters. So let's say with the word Cecilia, by the way, before I continue, the uppercase alphabet, what I love about modern calligraphy is that at least probably 75%, 80% of the letters of the lowercase alphabet is actually also the uppercase alphabet. What do I mean by that? Let me just see. I have my uppercase sheet over here. So many paper in my table. Maybe I don't have it. Never mind. Okay. So, oh yeah. Yeah, it's not it. Anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that, for example, you have the letter G and you really mastered, thank you so much. You mastered the letter G over here, right? So if you see the uppercase G and the lowercase g, they're pretty much the same.